You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. The Biden-appointed Gordan Gallagher has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deporting the family of Mohammed Solomon, the Islamic terrorist and illegal immigrant, after overstaying his visa, who firebombed women and children at a pro-Israeli march in solidarity with those currently being held hostage by Hamas. The Trump administration decided that since the individuals who were just recently come over to the United States, this isn't like this family of five have been over here for ages and decades and have basically had their entire lives here. They are recently arrived and in the United States. And the Trump administration decided that rather than go through a whole hullabaloo, since the family's not even supposed to be here in the first place, and judges have ruled that there's no reason for the Trump administration not to have the authority to remove any kind of temporary protected status or certain asylum-seeking status based on what it is they may be affiliated with, that the administration was going to remove them from the country because, A, you don't have a right to be here. You don't. If you are not a citizen of the United States, you have no right to be here. You can come to this country and ask for asylum. You can come to this country and ask for entry. You can come to this country and ask for a visa. But the U.S. does not have to give them to you. And the idea that the United States, instead of you needing an argument of why you should be here, if the argument is instead that the United States needs to create some kind of an argument why it should have to let you in or should not have to let you in, that now it's on the United States to come up with a reason why you shouldn't be let in, that is insane and ridiculous. And so they were being deported. The family was held together. And then U.S. District Judge Gordan Gallagher issued what CBS News is calling brief relief to Harem El Gamal, the wife of Mohammed Solomon, and their children, in order to, this is editorializing from CBS, in order to preserve the court's jurisdiction over the case. There's no case here. They're not citizens of the United States. They are not supposed to be here. The idea that someone who is not in the United States can use United States lawyers to sue the United States over the person getting to stay in the United States is patently insane. Now, here's the catch. Gallagher wrote in his decision that if they were to deport the family of this Islamic terrorist and illegal immigrant, that if they deported the family of that man, that would be something that would cause, quote, irreparable harm, end quote. You know what else causes irreparable harm? Spraying flaming gasoline on women and children. That causes irreparable harm. And I have no sympathy at all. I'm sorry. If you want to come into this country, you can come in the correct way. You can apply for a visa and show the State Department why you belong in the United States. If you can't do that, if you have to say, oh, I have no documents or anything, I am just whisked away from violence to come to the United States, wink, wink, nod, nod, trust me. And the United States has to let you in because that's just the way things are. That is patently ridiculous, and anyone who says anything along those lines should be mocked and berated for such stupid logic. Or what's more likely, the absence of. Now, here's the thing about Gallagher, because again, this is one of the leftist activist judges who Chuck Schumer bragged quite openly was one of the progressives appointed and confirmed to halt any future Republican administration. Chuck Schumer said that openly, multiple times on camera, once on camera in the last year. Gallagher was nominated by Biden. Again, I have to use air quotes there because no one really has any idea if it was Joe Biden or someone else completely nominating individuals because the president of the United States was and is, at that time, a corpse. In 2023, Biden brought forward Gallagher to the Senate. And here's what is really going to irk a lot of you. This wasn't some sweeping major victory, pass right through, no problem. Gallagher was only passed through the Senate and therefore confirmed with a vote of 53 to 43. Here's the catch. 5 Republican senators sided with the Democrats to confirm Gallagher. Chuck Grassley of Iowa, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Susan Collins of Maine, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Now look, I'm gonna be very real with you. Right off the bat here. If you are a Republican senator who is voting to confirm openly Democrat activist judges to what are supposed to be nonpartisan or impartial positions, because you want to be seen as some kind of a nice person, you own this. You own this. And to be clear, I really like Chuck Grassley on a lot of things. I really like Tom Tillis on a lot of things. There's a couple of areas where I'm not too upset with Lindsey Graham. But if you have the gall to side with the Democrats on a confirmation vote, you own the actions of that judge. If you leave the caucus, you leave the party to vote for someone on the opposite side, you own it. And now we have yet another judge, one of many, unfortunately, as we're going to get into, who are openly violating the Article 2 authority of the United States Constitution in order to tell the president whether or not he can effectuate the foreign policy of this country. People who are not citizens in this country are here at the good graces of the State Department. Marco Rubio has made this explicitly clear. But the media, they went on a big, huge whining, just crying in the streets tour. Here was MSNBC this morning, just complete and utter nonsense.
Making an example is understating it, Willie. The White House almost gloating at Victory Lap. A number of tweets last night about about this suspect's family, rushing them out. And I was told by a White House advisor late yesterday that this is sort of the plan here. Is that we know from covering Donald Trump for a long time, his reflex is always to come back to immigration. He believes that's a signature issue. He believes that's what got him elected, and that Americans want to see things like this. Now, in this case, obviously, we don't know the family's involvement. The suspect is accused of a heinous crime. There are certainly plenty of Americans who would be glad to see him go, but might have questions about the family.
No. The USA Today tried to do the exact same kind of spin today. It was nonsensical. They made the case, well, the Boulder suspect's daughter dreamed of studying medicine. Now she faces deportation, according to Michael Loria from USA Today. First of all, just a cool fun fact here. You do not have a right to come to the United States to study medicine. You don't. And if you or individuals in your family make bad decisions, I'm sorry, but according to how the State Department assesses whether or not an individual is given a visa to stay, which is how, by the way, once again, that is how Solomon was in the country. He was here by a visa. He was not here through the long immigration process. None of these individuals had applied for citizenship in the United States. So right now, at this point in time, the media trying to say, well, Americans are really concerned about this terrorist family getting to study medicine here in the United States. Oh, the horror. Oh, man, this is just too terrible. Nope. I'm afraid not. Other immigration news from around the country today, and then we'll bring on Elizabeth Mitchell, the Daily Signal's White House correspondent, right before the show went live. That's why we're sharing a screenshot of a tweet with you over from Chaya Reichik. Massachusetts City Councilor Edel Haxheich has been charged for assaulting police during an ICE raid. Oh, what a surprise. She's been charged with a misdemeanor count of assault and battery on a police officer and a common law violation of interfering with a police officer. So the left going all in on this kind of insane nutcase strategy of going against the Trump administration on immigration is not going to work well for them. It's not going to end well in the judicial system. The Supreme Court is getting more and more and more annoyed. Not just John Roberts, but even Kagan. We'll catch the radio crew in a second. We got to head over to the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, we'll swing over. We'll see if she is on the line here in just a second. Over to our White House correspondent, Elizabeth Mitchell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Tony.
So let's dig right into some of the biggest things. I mean, the old White House press secretary, she's the very first press secretary to be made fun of for releasing a book about why she's leaving the Democrats. What do you think?
I personally would hope someone else reads the book so I don't have to, but I certainly want to know what's in there. She has all the information, if she tells us the truth about what really happened, why Biden said he wasn't going to drop out, said that he was the candidate, and then suddenly he's giving the power over to Kamala Harris. I think a lot of questions here as to who pushed Biden out and why the press was lied to so much about it. And so I'm really interested to hear what she has to say.
It's going to be the first time ever that I think anyone's been interested in hearing what she has to say. But there are some real things that Americans have questions on. For example, the Trump administration just rescinded the Biden-era guidance requiring emergency room doctors to perform abortions. One of the reasons that was rescinded, the idea of who pushed for this policy is genuinely up in the air in the Biden administration. We have no idea.
Absolutely. The Biden administration did everything it could to maximize the number of abortions happening in this country, it seems. And one of the ways it did that was using a law called EMTALA, which concerns emergency room care of women, pregnant women. They used that law to force ER doctors to perform abortions on women if the woman says that it's medically necessary. So it's really unnecessary to interpret the law in this way. And all it really does is force doctors who have conscience issues with performing abortions to do something that they're morally uncomfortable with.
Well, that's really not the only uncomfortable asset to today's news. Of course, we're also looking over at the Carolyn Levitt smackdown of the British Broadcasting Corporation, who changed their headline on the news coming out of the Gaza Strip 4-5 times. First, it was Israeli tanks, then it was Israeli soldiers, then it was just soldiers, then it's the Palestinian Gaza Health Organization says all of these clamoring talking points about how Israel supposedly had massacred 25 people outside of an aid station. Carolyn let the BBC have it. It was not a pretty moment.
I also would like to highlight how she absolutely slammed the Washington Post in there, because the Washington Post had a headline, "Mysterious Drop in Fentanyl Across the Border." And she pointed out there is absolutely no mystery in there. It's because they're not letting Mexican cartels who are smuggling fentanyl to come across the border. That's the obvious reason why fentanyl is dropping. And it's pretty crazy that WAPO even thought they could get past her with a headline like this.
You know, it's one thing to go just after the media in general or just, issue complaints, but to make it clear why you were unhappy with the Washington Post, to see a press secretary actually in charge of her office is not something that we've seen recently in the last couple of administrations, where you have the Washington Post reaching out and asking questions from the Trump administration about the fentanyl. And then the administration says, here are all of these statistics from the Department of Homeland Security, from the ATF, from the Drug Enforcement Agency. Here are things from all of the states down on the border. Here are issue and data on the fentanyl seizures. Here's the policies we believe have made some kind of a change. And she called the Washington Post out on the carpet for using none of it. That's journalistic malpractice that is objectively called out in a way that is a well-deserved humiliation.
Yeah, WAPO deserves to be held accountable. I think we were talking earlier about Karine Jean-Pierre. She was someone who clearly was not in charge of the briefing room. She had that big binder. She was searching around. You ask her, oh, what do you say about someone's tragically dying? She has to check the binder. She can't just speak off the cuff about it. Mm-hmm. She was tied to that thing. And she also was clearly afraid of the press to an extent, considering she kicked 440 members of the press, including the Daily Signal, out of the briefing room because she didn't want to have to deal with people who were going to disagree with her and make it uncomfortable. We have that on one hand. And then on the other hand, we have Caroline, who commands that room. She shows the press who's boss, takes control of the room, and isn't going to let the press lie like they're so accustomed to doing.
Absolutely. Elizabeth Mitchell, Daily Signal White House correspondent. Thanks for taking just a second here with us. We'll be back in a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Way too much news for anything in the realm of niceties. The Trump administration announced today via the U.S. Department of Education that Columbia University's accreditor let me rephrase that here. The U.S. Department of Education has notified Columbia University's accreditor of Columbia's numerous Title VI violations. In essence, you have universities that are sponsored or are certified by accreditors, meaning that these independent institutions come to the university and they say, are you following federal law? Are you following proper educational practices? Are your assessments real assessments? You're not just saying, all right, if you sign your name, congratulations, you've just passed medical school. That's supposed to be the function of an accrediting agency, because then that agency can go about the country and say, these are the schools that we approve of. We accredit them. And the DOE, the Department of Education, has now notified the accreditor of Columbia that, they have violated civil rights law repeatedly, which means, in effect, that Columbia University is no longer an accredited school, which is fantastic, and it is very, very, very well deserved. It turns out that when you, as a university structure, cast aside anything in pursuit of knowledge, in pursuit of advancement, when you cast aside the reasons that people send their kids to school, or should I say used to send their kids to school, in favor of social activism on behalf of Hamas, or on behalf of whatever the gender of the day is, or some Marxist socialist nonsense, and then you use those particular aims to violate civil rights law by setting up equitable standards for things like what individuals and what demographics get to partake in certain university programs, or when the rule system of the university applies to students of one particular demographic but really do not apply to anybody else. That does not go over very well. A new article as well from the New York Post says that a Columbia protester, one of the ones that we were told were just, valiant free speechers for democracy, has a direct link to Hamas' deadly Al-Qassam Brigade's militant unit, according to the Department of Justice and the New York Post. This is a guy who openly walked around saying, quote, "I am a Jew hater," end quote. So he was one of the people protesting against Israel on Columbia University's campus. He also apparently contemplated setting a student on fire. Where have we seen that before? This individual this Tarek Bazrok is awaiting trial after being indicted on 3 federal hate crimes. Was also a member of a chat group that received regular updates from Abu Obaida. In essence, he received instructions from one of the militant groups of Hamas. Not a guy that's just like, I think that Hamas was justified. That's one kind of bad. But to say, I'm a member of one of the Hamas militias, hanging around on Columbia University campus, that would be a problem. That is, in fact, something that Americans do not want. And the left has made this entire case of saying these aren't real issues, it's just people free speeching. After all, these illegal immigrants as well, they're just real nice and buddy-buddy. They have dreams of studying medicine, as the USA Today put it. But it turns out the more we look at individuals who are in the country who by law should not be here, the more we find that is truly disturbing. And not just from individuals who shouldn't be here on kind of a citizenry basis, but also those who have foreign connections. FBI Director Kash Patel announced yesterday that the FBI had arrested a Chinese national in the United States who has allegedly smuggled a dangerous biological pathogen into the country. This individual, Yunqing Zhang, is alleged to have smuggled a dangerous fungus called Fusarium graminearum. Essentially, it's an agro-terror agent, a kind of fungus that will completely destroy wheat, barley, maize, and rice through a very, very serious case of head blight. This individual is also apparently working with someone in China. There are other arrests that are currently in the process, from what we understand. It's not only responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year, but it also causes significant health issues in both humans and livestock. How many times do we have to make it crystal clear that the Chinese Communist Party is adversarial against the United States and that they are currently, actively, overtly trying to subvert any kind of American infrastructure in this country, whether through COVID-19 or whether through bio or agro-terror agents in the agricultural industry, or by stationing individuals right next to American military encampments, or flying things over the continental United States, or operating Chinese police stations inside Americans' metropolitan cities. How many times operating TikTok, feeding information directly back to Beijing while operating a different algorithm that encourages American teenagers to act like fools, more so than all teenagers normally are. This kind of overt, blatant disregard for American sovereignty, what could be considered an act of war, should at the very least get all Chinese assets kicked out of the country yesterday. There is no reason a Chinese national or a Chinese corporation should be allowed to own land in the United States, period. For that matter, we should be severely limiting the number of Chinese nationals that are currently allowed to gain visa entry into the United States. Because this stuff just keeps on coming. Now, the left is taking this, again, kind of right on the chin. They have decided to address all of this by instead fear-mongering about Elon Musk. So over on The View today, the totally hinged Sonny Hostin, definitely not a person who should be wearing 15 straitjackets sewn together, was trying to make the claim that Elon Musk has killed over 300,000 children.
But the damage that he did was just really incredible.
Yeah.
He slashed 250,000 federal employees, more than 8,500 contracts, more than 10,000 grants, and his cutbacks on medical research cost the lives of the foreign aid, cost 300,000 lives, mostly children. That's the damage that Elon Musk did. So I don't think anyone should be listening to him about anything.
Again, thanks to Newsbusters for getting that clip over to us. The absolute gall to suggest, just based on hearsay, that, well, you cut these federal agents, so therefore he's responsible for 300,000 deaths. That is bonkers, given the current epidemic in this country of crimes committed by those who should never have been here in the first place. And as soon as you suggest there is a problem with illegal immigrant crime, you are told by individuals like Chris Cuomo that it is an artificial issue. Now, don't get me wrong, Sonny Hostin's not the only one fear-mongering right now. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has decided to take the rational approach regarding the debate between the fiscal hawks on the Big Beautiful Bill and the more populist side of the Republican Party on the Big Beautiful Bill. Chuck Schumer has taken kind of the third route here to announce, we're all going to die.
And we all know one thing. Donald Trump is just lying about the bill. Lying about the bill. Well, here's the We Are All Going to Die Act.
The We Are All Going to Die Act. That's something that a normal man might say. I mean, certainly not the kind of guy that stood up in front of the country and said that he sees a lot of aroused people. Oh, my goodness.
People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. We'll let the radio crew head over to commercial and stick around with the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, I do want to mention one last piece of the immigration news that's worth noting. James Boasberg, you may remember, is the guy who was very, very angry that we had the gall to get rid of an MS-13 wife beater. You know, the standard Maryland man, according to the left. Well, Judge Boasberg has now certified class and enters injunction in removal of Venezuelans to El Salvador. In case you're wondering what that means in English, he is now suggesting that the United States needs to facilitate the removal of all individuals deported to El Salvador, whether or not they are citizens of El Salvador, so that they can have a special hearing under, oh man, I wonder whose oversight. Certainly not the guy who has randomly assigned himself multiple cases regarding the Trump administration, where they are allowed to say, I am a good person. Now, I'm just going to be very upfront with you here. The idea that what the United States needs to do is go down, grab all of these people, bring them back so that they can say in front of a judge, I kid you not, I am not a bad person. As opposed to what? Maybe I'm missing something here. There's just got to be, they've had multiple hearings and trials, these individuals. So at what point have any of these people, these illegal immigrants, almost all of them members of Tren de Aragua, of MS-13, of the Sinaloa cartel, not exactly your local Boy Scout chapter. Sorry, I guess it's just Scouts of America now, which is we'll get to that a little later. But in all seriousness, what are they going to show up and say? Yes, I did it. I did all of these crimes. I once committed a lot of murders, and therefore you should send me to El Salvador. Find me that person. Who are you talking about? But Judge Boasberg and Judge Gallagher and I don't know at this point, Judge Judy and every other activist judge that Chuck Schumer has been able to slap into various positions is essentially getting a very large stick and just poking Chief Justice John Roberts with it repeatedly. Just poke, 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 injunction, 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 whether or not the order violates the Article 2 authority of the U.S. Constitution, whether or not that federal district court judge has anywhere near the authority to make an injunction regarding those things, or in that region, to issue a nationwide stay, for example, from the hills of Connecticut, the forests of Vermont, the deserts of Mogadishu, for all we know. The idea that is what the federal judges are currently doing with their time, that irks moderates, because moderates love peace and quiet. Take every old white guy who is a moderate in the Republican Party. He wants one thing and one thing alone. He wants to sit back in an easy chair and watch Matlock. That is the common denominator of each and every one of these moderate Republicans. And when you force them to get up and deal with your nonsense because you have broken something again, the guy who was willing to let you do kind of what you wanted, all right, fine, whatever, just, I don't really like Trump, but just go. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And now you have the Supreme Court essentially creating these carve-outs in cases to debate whether or not district court judges can issue federal injunctions right now. This is an unprecedented time. I've been telling you, we're going to hit the summer of SCOTUS. It's going to be great. But I digress. We have to head over and pick up the radio crew from the commercial break. Don't go anywhere. We're glad you're here. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
I regret to inform you that I do have to issue a quick correction as we go on the air. I did not mean to insinuate that only the elderly and moderate Republicans watch Matlock. In all seriousness, is a very big fan of Andy Griffith and his too short a time on the acting sphere. I don't blame you. It's certainly a lot better than the latest season of America's Got Talent. However, if you are watching TV these days, there are some really great ads that are scrolling across your phone. And for the first time in history, I can say there is some grand content coming out of the government. Now, for those of you who are perhaps in our audience that's maybe north of 40, that's not an old classification. This is a social media millennial kind of an argument here. There is a known idea under those who are the last of the millennials and then the Gen Z that when a government or an official account does something with social media, it's very cringy. It hurts. It's awkward. It's like when Hillary Clinton tries to be cool and you just want to die a little bit on the inside. That's what I'm talking about. Usually you just let those things go. But somehow, somewhere, the Immigration Customs Enforcement account, the Department of Homeland Security account, and other White House affiliated accounts have gotten really good at social media. And all ages on the right side of the aisle and a lot on the independent side of the aisle are enjoying some phenomenal stuff. One of these is the new Immigration Customs Enforcement advertisement, or as they are called by those who like them and hate them the most, ICE. So they suggest, hey, if you're going to a neighborhood party, perhaps an illegal cartel-run party, just remember you've got some friends that are always willing to bring a little bit of ICE.
Yo, VIP. Let's kick it. Ice, baby.
Let us know, we'll bring ICE. And then it's footage of these federal agents going around and breaking up a lot of these really horrible incidents. We talked about this on the Top News in 10 this morning. The ICE operation, which just concluded in South Carolina, busted one of these one of these cartel clubs where they were trafficking minors. They found missing children. And I mean like the missing children that have their pictures in Walmart and at the post office. Those missing children, they're finding people who have been lost for ages, victims of human trafficking at these cartel parties that ICE is going and busting. So again, for those in the media, the legacy media, who are desperately trying to tell you this is a very isolated issue, I don't care about the size of the stain. I don't care about the size of the mess. But if there is a mess sitting in your house, it needs to be cleaned. Because those living in your house deserve to live in a place where they don't have to walk through piles of crumbs and broken glass every day. That's what the Trump administration is doing right now with ICE. There are cases in this country, whether they be from Chinese nationals or Central and South American gangs or Middle Eastern terrorists who are residing in this country and who have been allowed to sit here and claim asylum status by Joe Biden's crew. You do not deserve to be the victim of a national security failure. But Cory Booker, of course, he doesn't understand this. He's busy giving 24-hour speeches on the Senate floor and not pooping the entire time. Ted Cruz does call him out for it in a phenomenal moment of committee WWE in the Senate. Check it out.
You are very, very, sir, very, very deep into the waters of hypocrisy in your criticisms of Chuck Schumer.
So let the record reflect that Spartacus did not answer the question and did not tell us whether the criminal law should be enforced, because he knows the answer is yes. And he knows that the Biden Department of Justice was being wildly political and partisan in refusing to enforce the law because they disagreed with the Supreme Court justices' rulings.
Here's why this is important. Like beyond just the enjoyment that we all get out of watching Ted Cruz backhand Cory Booker, because that's fun in and of itself. I could watch that on repeat. But the real reason this is important, there was a lot of decorum that only Republicans honored and Democrats honored when it suited them for a long time. In which we go, I'm now recognizing the senator from Washington. Oh, Mr. Honorable Senator from Wyoming, good to see you. And then they would do this old debate nonsense. And then the left started abandoning that. And in those hearings, in those committee meetings, called their Republican counterparts murderers and homophobes and fascists and everything else under the sun. We are seeing for the first time, I will give this to Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's not my favorite member of the House on the Republican side of the aisle. She takes no crap. And if I can see that inspiring other members of the House and the Senate, who at times might have honored the decorum of the chamber to the dot and the tittle, now to be treating the Democrats as they are themselves treated is excellent. It is long overdue. This is how, by the way, you get from the sends an angry letter to direct definitive action. It is through deciding that you've had enough of it. What are some of the things that we've had enough of? Well, again, the weird skinny soy boy dudes in dresses. And it's Pride Month, I guess, or whatever. So here you go.
All I will say is that if you invite me to your thing, generally, that implies that you know who I am. And
honey, dude, no one wants to know who you are. This is an individual in a thin black dress and what looked like heels that for the record, are rather unnecessary to make this video so you can do your clop, clop, clop. And then again, well, he's in the middle of telling us why it's important for us to call him whatever he wants to be called.
Generally, that implies you know my pronouns. Even if for some reason you don't, but I show up looking like this, generally, you can...
Okay, I'm going to make a new rule. if you're going to do like the curve strike pose, if you're going to show up like this and then you thrust your hips out, you should be required by law to have hips. Like if you do that and you're like a railroad spike, I'm sorry there, Bob. No weird pose for you. We're going to skip that one because there's so many more to get to and they all hurt me so much, Nick. You know this. This next one, though, is all about the language policing. Again, the Democrats' choice du jour here. The comparisons are getting a little bit wild as to why you should not call a person the wrong pronouns. I don't know if I would have chosen it. In fact, I know I would not have chosen this argument, but anyway.
Why can I choose my pronouns, but you can't choose not to be called cis? For the same reason white people can't use the N-word. You can. You'll just be called a racist for being a racist.
Okay. So, cisgender is a made-up term for an individual who operates normally. In other words, a person who does not likely suffer from either severe trauma at a young age or a chemical imbalance or the peer pressure of humping anything that moves. It turns out that being used as some kind of a term, like, shut up, cisgender, whatever, like that kind of nonsense that came out of Tumblr in 2012, saying that I can call you that, but you can't, not call me a dude, says Captain Adam's apple over there. That's like calling him the N-word. No. No.
Those are called consequences. Cis is not an identity, it's a descriptor, it's an adjective, just like transphobic or racist. And look, you cannot identify as racist if you want, but that doesn't mean that black people aren't going to call you racist.
Okay, so that argument also kind of falls flatter than that dude's chest. So I can call you this because it's a descriptor is a very bad reason for determining what is and isn't a slur. I will remind you that some of the most popular slurs in history are in fact a description of what an individual looks like. One of the two most commonly used slurs for a Hispanic individual describes the condition of their back in the sun. Again, the N-word literally comes from the Spanish translation for black. God in heaven, the stupidity is palpable, and it leaves a really bad taste in the mouth. It doesn't wash down well with hormones either. I will skip to this next one here before we let the radio crew head over to commercial. The fear-mongering of that, again, in this country right now, as we go through wave after wave and incident after incident of left-wing targeted violence, that now it's Pride Month, so now we have to hear all of the non-binaries come out and say that they're terrified of everyone else is not going to fly.
I want to share something that just happened around me that made me really anxious for disability awareness. I heard like an explosion sound. It sounded like a, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so just as a side, because this is my one little quip here, I can't help it, I'm sorry. If you say, I heard an explosion sound, you do not then have to describe it via onomatopoeia. And if you do choose to describe the explosion sound you heard as an onomatopoeia, it gives a little more, to be honest. Also, you don't have to say, if you know what I mean. I know what you mean. You just explained it twice. You heard an explosion sound. It sounded like, all right. Anywho.
I'm near a mall in America, so unfortunately that's a valid fear. I look behind me instinctually, fight or flight, you know? And all I could see in the direction of the sound was a white Jeep that has an American flag on it. And they parked near me. And
a white Jeep. Oh no. Oh, the horror. Those Caucasian Jeeps, man. You gotta look out for them. Radio crew will catch you in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. It's unfortunate they don't get to see the rest of this because he's going to tell us why the white Jeep with the American flag made him think the explosion noises, because we all know explosions drive Jeeps, that's coming for him or her or it, they, them. Yes.
They're like getting out of their car and going to dinner or something. Unfortunately, my instinct was to duck because I heard an explosion noise. I saw that truck, Jeep, whatever, and all I could think was that there was danger nearby and I had to duck and hide my head and make sure I was safe. I'm feeling really emotional over the fact that I even have to be worried about that, considering how I look, how I'm presenting right now, where I live, the political status of everything happening right now.
You know, I've looked through the records. I've dug through all of the various kinds of like mass shootings and violence in this country's history. Never once has there been a white Jeep with an American flag that showed up to commit some kind of mass atrocity. I looked it up. None. No, usually they're like really weird, gross sedans or O.J. Simpson's Bronco. That's when it comes to showing up for violence, that's usually what's chosen. If it's from the other side of the community, well, we'll talk about those vehicles in just a bit. To be fair, I understand that individuals do have, traumatic responses. I get it. But that's for things that have actually happened to you. Individuals who have PTSD because of an actual traumatic incident that occurred that make them fearful of explosions. Like people who have served this country, for example. But you watching a couple of videos, and now you've got the Buka McSpookums over a white Jeep and an American flag, who's more likely just to be a dude out enjoying the day. Oh, that's probably a shooter. Okay, easy there, Ilhan Omar. We'll tone that one down just a bit. The last one I have to show you is Canada is just having a rough one right now. So the Canadian police are breaking out the drag queens to do their high platform kicks. Again, official Canadian police like events for Pride Month. Not out arresting criminals, not out actually doing anything useful. Just, again, getting the grown men in the lingerie and the deep cleavage cuts and the fake boobs because, hey, that's what the kids want out of the police event. Can you imagine being a kid who's like excited about the police? And you're like, oh, dude, I want to see like cops acting like cops. And you show up and it's a Mountie and a drag queen or doing this like cultural dance. Oh, yes, I feel safe. I'm trying to figure out why parents cry on my birthday, eh? Great. All right, we're going to head over to an excellent interview about a movie that's worth watching, actually, about the United States. I'm genuinely, you can actually hear me in the interview, I'm excited to actually go see this one. So we'll go over to it in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. There hasn't been a lot worth talking about at the Kennedy Center for a very long time, and that stinks because Kennedy Center is a gorgeous place. It's a culture touchstone of national art and beauty, but that all changes, that being the string of rough things at the Kennedy Center. This evening, a premiere of an excellent piece of cinema we're excited to talk about.
I came to persuade you to avoid these dangers.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
If our union is to hold together, something must be done.
He will become founder of a mighty empire.
The fate of unborn millions now depends under God upon the conduct and courage of this army.
Ralph Ogstros of Heroic Pictures. By the way, thanks for coming on just right at the offset. Thanks for making a little bit of time for us.
Tony, thank you. It's an honor to be here and always a pleasure to be at the Heritage Foundation.
So tell us a little bit right off the front here. Obviously, I haven't seen a lot of legacy media coverage of this movie's releases, The American Miracle. I know it's based on a book by Michael Medved, but that's just about it. Give us kind of a taste here.
Well, Michael Medved published a book in 2016. It was a New York Times bestseller called The American Miracle. And in that book, Michael looks at some of the foundational events in American history, starting more or less around the French and Indian War up to the Civil War. Now, we took the first several chapters of that book, and Michael asked if we would be interested in making a feature film, a theatrical feature film based on that, especially as we anticipate the 250th anniversary of the United States next year. So we undertook that, and it's a big movie. There's a lot going on. There are battle scenes and cannons and horses and stunt coordinators and armorers and all kinds of things that go into a major motion picture. But that's what we are premiering this evening at the Kennedy Center. There's a black tie, red carpet gala premiere, and it's always a pleasure to be in our nation's capital to do that.
You know, we were talking just a little bit before the interview about how much, for one of the first times in my life, I lament not being in Washington, D.C. I would love to have attended something like this, mainly because as a dad from the Midwest, few things are as enjoyable to me and many millions like me as sitting down and watching The Patriot, sitting down and watching classic Americana not being portrayed in an apologetic fashion, but in a way that truly does summarize what is the miracle of how the American experiment came to be. And we can talk about the actors, and of course, I want to ask you a little bit about the soundtrack and that kind of stuff in a moment or two, but there is a desperate need for movies like this, for cultural material like this at this point in our nation's history, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe the one way in which this movie stands apart from many of the others, especially in anticipation of next year, is that ours is very meticulously historically correct and accurate. We had historians on the set every day of production to make sure that we were very true and accurate to the way things actually happened. We even brought the production to a halt on several occasions because there was some question as to the historicity of something particular that we were portraying on screen. So I would say that is one of the main trademarks of this film, is that it is very accurate and very historically correct. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why the mainstream media hasn't picked up on it. There's
a real hunger for historical authenticity in a lot of world building that takes place in modern TV shows and film that is, well, it was really swept by the wayside in the aughts and the teens. But people recognizing that we do, in fact, have the ability now to produce longer form content, that we're able to produce more impressively articulate special effects now that we have a bigger wealth of knowledge on some aspects than perhaps we may have 20 years ago. We do want to see the things we were always told as kids we couldn't have. You can't have a movie that's just like the book. You can't have movies that are historically accurate because no one will like them or they're not interesting. Well, it turns out there's a huge hunger for this. And so, especially when you're talking about something as crucial as the history of the American pageant, you better get it right because it's going to be debated.
Indeed. No, that's very true. As a matter of fact, one of the questions that I get very often when we do various Q&As is whether or not we've produced a Christian movie. And I say, absolutely not. We have not produced a Christian movie. We have produced a historically accurate movie. As a matter of fact, Michael Medved is an Orthodox Jew. So the idea was never to turn what the popular media and culture call these old dead white guys from the Revolutionary era into evangelical Christians. We portray them the way that they actually were, using words that they said, words that come straight out of the Constitutional Convention, words that come from primary source research. The one thing about this film is it is very historically accurate.
And not just historically accurate with guys we've never heard of or maybe community theater style actors. There are some really stellar stars that have stepped up to participate in a movie like this that gives it, as though it needed it already, the another dash of appeal that actually makes me well, just to be quite frank with you, the second this interview is over, I'm going to find a way, come hell or high water, to get this shown in our town's theater because I'm officially excited about this. Tell us a little bit about the cast in the film. I want to just hear your description a little bit of it.
You know, we were very fortunate to get some of the actors that we specifically were looking for because of their passion for American history and patriotism as well. So one interesting character in the movie is Thomas Jefferson. We portray him as the younger Thomas Jefferson, who is the president of the United States, and then also the very, very late in life, in his final days, Thomas Jefferson at Monticello. The younger Thomas Jefferson is played by Kevin Sorbo. The older Thomas Jefferson, pretty much on his deathbed, is Pat Boone, who maybe many from our generation will recognize or won't recognize. I remember Pat Boone very well. So,
I was raised right, so I am in fact acquainted with who Pat Boone is. So all I can say is I appreciate you're not doing perhaps the politically woke thing and, maybe bringing in Lizzo to play Thomas Jefferson. A hearty thank you for that.
Indeed.
I appreciate
Yes. No. Indeed. We don't have Snoop Dogg in the movie. We don't have Lady Gaga. We went with people who really had a passion for what it is we're doing. So also Cameron Arnett, who is a veteran Hollywood actor and has been in many motion pictures. I remember him from Star Trek: The Next Generation. He's in the movie. Nicole C. Mullen, who is a fairly well-known contemporary Christian artist who's been in the business for a very long time, multi-Grammy nominee and Dove Award winner, and I mean, just everyone knows her music. This is her first dramatic acting role, and she just knocks it out of the park. We were so amazed by her performance. She plays a slave in the movie, and we also deal a little bit with the issue of slavery. So just a wonderful, stellar cast. Libby Smallbone, the little sister of the For King and Country brothers.
Right.
So from the Smallbone family. So wonderful cast. We have a cast of over 100 actors and extras, and just a beautiful group of people with which to produce a film like this.
Yeah, well said. Let's talk about the sound of the movie. A movie like this that, again, goes in depth in the American experiment, that looks at the early stages of our country. There might be some expectations about how the orchestration of a movie like this would take place. The soundtrack may quite literally make or break something of this manner. How did you guys approach it?
Well, we were looking for composers that we felt whose work product already was similar in style to what it was we were looking for a film of this type. And out of all of the various composers, we looked at about 11 composers who we were interested in. We ended up choosing someone who I've known personally for many years, Lolita Ritmanis. She is a veteran Hollywood composer, a Grammy and award-winning composer. Her music was just perfect for this. So we asked her to compose the soundtrack. She composed 90 minutes of brand new music for the film. The music almost becomes a character in the film. It weaves sort of a tapestry of a fabric that ties together all of these various scenes and events. And we recorded the soundtrack in Latvia. We recorded it last fall with the Liepājas Symphony Orchestra, one of the oldest orchestras in the Baltics, professional orchestra, world-class musicians, in a state-of-the-art recording studio. Both Lolita and I are originally of Latvian descent, so we had some connections. We were able to pull some strings and have that happen. And it's just a beautiful, epic, sweeping, symphonic, and choral soundtrack that has been making its own impression on some of the preview and test audiences that we've been playing it for.
So let me ask just final big kind of grand scope question here. And I know that this may sound kind of like the CNN Fox style interview question where I ask what you're trying to accomplish with this particular movie. What is it that you really want to see come out of this? Instead of giving kind of your elevator pitch on this, at the end of the day, once this movie has been out, once people have seen it, once it's been a part of the conversation, what is it that you hope people draw from this kind of in the long term?
Well, by the founders' own words, their own writings and speeches, they saw very clearly what George Washington called the divine hand of providence acting in human affairs and in the revolution and in favor of our cause back during the Revolutionary War. So the tagline of the movie is, "Our nation is no accident." So if our nation is no accident, that would imply that there is a purpose and agency involved. And if there's purpose and agency involved,
then there's a responsibility involved.
Exactly. There's responsibility placed on every one of us to continue to advance and perpetuate that plan. And that's what we're hoping people would come away from from this movie, is a deep sense of gratitude, but a sense of responsibility that in order to maintain this republic and its intention, we all need to chip in and help advance that cause.
I think it's really, it is fascinating to me how, as I've gotten older, the outlook, at least from my perspective, on my political philosophy, has been more leaned toward an individual's deeply held civic responsibility to their family, to their community, to their country, to place their own desires and kind of the youthful things that are pursued so often by the young aside, and to embrace that which is necessary for the nation. And that kind of attitude is something that was driven firmly by our founding fathers at an age far younger than mine. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that. Can you tell us, just very briefly before we end here, I know we're a little bit over time, where can we eventually go to see this?
Well, the movie will be playing for a limited run this coming week, June 9th, 10th, and 11th, in over 1,000 theaters across the country. So you can go to the website, AmericanMiracleMovie.com.
We'll have that on the Chiron below, of course.
And you can find the theater near you. It'll be playing across the country where you can see it. Please go out and see it. If the response is as strong as we pray it will be, they will extend our run possibly through the 4th of July. So please go and see the movie.
Well, Ralph Augustros, I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed this, getting to talk about this a little bit. And as well, like I said, as soon as we're off the phone here, I'm absolutely going to talk to you about how I can see this, because I have to now. I need to see it.
I certainly hope that you do, and I hope that people turn out across the country. We've heard of churches and local groups buying out whole theaters already to see it because of the impact and importance of this message.
I've seen that with The Chosen. I've seen this idea of such an inspiration towards wanting others to see it that you are willing to purchase tickets on someone else's behalf in order to make it kind of an event. So
absolutely. Indeed.
Really looking forward to that. We'll have to bring you on maybe in the future to talk about just that trend in society as a whole.
I look forward to that.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
I bet you guys thought that I was going to let you go this evening without showing you the Karine Jean-Pierre announcement. Oh, of course not. I have to do a little bonus tonus just for this disaster, this garbage heap of a moment in American history. So a bit of a backstory here, because, you know, just for kicks and or giggles. I was in a couple of TV hits this morning, busy, you know, getting a couple of things done. And I hadn't seen the news about the Al Capone lookalike herself, Karine Jean-Pierre, announcing she's just leaving the Democrat Party, just vamoosed, gone, and writing her little expose. It's going to be very spicy. And so our executive editor and president, let us all know, hey, you know, this is something that obviously we should be covering. He was making sure that two reporters weren't writing the same article at the same time, which when you work in an organization like ours, sometimes we're chomping at the bit so much that you can almost start writing the same thing twice. So I, very foolishly, who had not seen the news, said, well, what, is she like coming out again? I mean, it's Pride Month, but she's already come out once, so let me guess, it's a book. And it was, in fact, a book drop. We made this prediction right here on this show, that there were going to be books and exposés galore, that as soon as Biden was out of office, that there were going to be, everyone was just going to leave him, abandon him, throw caution to the wind. Everyone was going to get out their pens and their pads of paper if they were literate, which many of them are not. So they got their friends who know how to read, or hired somebody to transcribe down these beautiful books all about Joe Biden and the inner secrets of the super special sanctum. And, well, Karine Jean-Pierre announcing it is fantastic. So I will pause and play this one just a little bit while we're going through it, partly because I want to start off very quickly here. We'll start and we'll pause it.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre.
Yeah, we know, we don't care. So if you look on the you know what, I'll even unlock it and expand the size here for the viewers. If you look above her, now the camera angle will change just a little bit so that we can actually see what's below the text here. There we go. She positioned herself in her local library to have 3 books, which, by the way, we have confirmed are not even supposed to be in this section based on the books that are around it. She went and found these 3 books over her head and put them up against the wall, again, in the middle of the thing. That is Black Mind, Called Home, and something the lesbian life or like or lust line, the lesbian line, something about lesbians. Yeah, probably domestic abuse statistics. So I'm just going to be completely upfront with you guys. This was already going to be bad because she has to tell us every single time she gets the chance. This is not me making a big deal of this. She has made more of a deal than anyone about being a black lesbian. I have never seen anyone so excited about being that. This is why she was historic, right? Oh, she's so historic. She's the first, black lesbian, color, special vice presidential, press secretarial majesty. Okay, great. You have melanin and you like girls. That's like a good portion of the U.S. population. I don't know what to tell you. But anywho, I just wanted to bring that up before we dug into one of the greatest book announcements of all time, as well as a very historic moment, which she's no stranger to, apparently.
Please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I
thought black people didn't have privilege. I thought that was a white thing. I thought straight people had all the privilege. Wait a minute. I'm confused. Wait, it's what privilege? Lesbian privilege. No, they don't have, nope, just for straight people, just for white people, just for men. And I'm not talking about the shampoo. She's historic. She's the first one that has privilege. It's historic privilege. I knew it. There we go. All right, we got it.
Left. The people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood at a
Okay, so all right. I'll let her finish here.
Grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school. The number one question they ask me is, Karine,
why are you gay? No. Sorry. The question they ask her is, what was it like lying to the American people every single day? Also, producer Daniel just pointed out, October is spelled wrong. So the book comes out October 21. Ah, yes. I can't wait. Just going to be special.
How do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy?
No one is coming up to you at the supermarket as you travel around the country and going, "Excuse me, Karine Jean-Pierre, how do we save our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us?" And then everyone clapped. And that child's name, Albert Einstein. Get out of here. No one's asking you that. She sends herself text messages. You and I know it's true.
We protect vulnerable communities among us. What do we do next?
Stop talking to Karine Jean-Pierre would be a great start.
Because we don't have answers here. That's what they ask me.
I'm sure.
And this is my answer.
So there are people that are coming up and they're like, "I have questions. What do we do?" And she just breaks it out and says, "Book."
And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're
got a little Kamala Harris going on, the regressiveness of the significance of time
seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass.
Okay. I've hated this phrase for as long as it has existed. If you follow your own compass, you're going to have a bad time because do you know what compasses are supposed to do? Point in one direction only. That's the point of a compass, that no matter who we are, we can pick up a compass and it points north. That would be the idea. If you pick up a compass that you made that goes wherever you want it to do, you're not following anything. You're simply walking wherever your instincts take you. That's not following a compass. I just like followed my compass and my, I'm just like a navigator. I'm like Christopher Columbus, but like historicer.
And that's what I've done. And that's what this book does. And here's the truth.
Yes. The phrase she was known for in the administration, in which absolutely no truth was following. If you heard that sound, that's Peter Doocy sitting up because he's about to spring into action.
Here's how I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in
Okay, I think we need to stop thinking. Good advice taken.
I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to,
there it is,
and vulnerable communities that I respect,
there it is,
I will be there with you.
Oh, I'll be there for you. So if I'll be there for you. So, okay. So, amazing. I love the idea that she's now announced herself as an independent. This is really cool because this does make her the first Black lesbian press secretary to be made fun of for leaving her political party. So again, amazing, historic, fantastic. I do love, this is like the Chris Cuomo thing. I'm now independent. And nope. No, nothing has changed at all. And then she immediately follows up, I don't care how you identify politically, as long as you agree with me on everything and say the things I want you to say. Oh, okay.
I will move forward with you. And that is, I think, so important. So this book, Independent, it's about looking outside of boxes, not just always being in a partisan stance.
I'm just about to play the intro to the song Out of the Box, the old Disney show.
And how do we move forward together in a compassionate way, in a way that really truly cares about people?
Okay, I can't handle any more of this again. I can't do it. I need out. I'm done. Okay, just one thought before I let you guys go. If you ask, and I have actually been asked this a couple of times, believe it or not, this is a question that has come to me from those out there who've asked about my time teaching in public education and being an administrator in public education. I have been asked, what is it like to engage in conversations with people on the left every single day, knowing that you are on the opposite side of the aisle? The answer to your question is everything I heard from those people who were the English and the math coordinator and the weird social sciences person who shouldn't have had a position. Those people talked exactly like Karine Jean-Pierre did. Taking 18 minutes to say about 30 seconds worth of content. I just really thought that we need to be, again, she was the press secretary for the President of the United States. At a time when the president was dead, a corpse in office. Very easy, by the way. All she has to do is simply say, hey, there was a lot of stuff that went on. I'm going to talk about it in this book. Instead, she mentions none of that, the questions that people actually have, which was, what was it like to go up and shake the president's hand and him go, oh, I knew you back when you were dancing the moonwalk in the 80s. What in the world? You instead just... What inspires you in the morning? It's like the Instagrammers that do those wake up videos where they rise out of bed and eat like a plate of pancakes and strawberries in bed. Like, this is my morning routine. You know it's fake. You know it's garbage. Karine Jean-Pierre has decided, I'll do something no one has ever done before. I'll write a book where I talk about myself and standing side by side with people on the left who are, again, doing exactly what it is that I want them to do. Best of luck to you. Congratulations on the book. And it's going to be hilarious to watch this side of the aisle tear itself apart for the next 5 to 10 years because they can't even do a scandal right. They can't even toss the old guy out and bring in the new generation. They have to do this weird mealy-mouthed nonsense and patting themselves on the back. People always ask me, well, I'm so wonderful. And I go, well, that's because of my genitals. Great. Thank you, Karine. Wonderful. Atta girl. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with a little bit less of the historic queen. All right, this is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. Take care.